You're watching Tech Scope News. I'm Tiffany Nielsen, and joining me is my incredible co-host, Johannes Beekman. How are you today, Johannes?
I'm doing great, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for asking. And we have an exciting broadcast for you today where we will share what's really happening in the world of AI, cybersecurity, and cutting-edge tech. And this newscast is brought to you by IoT Marketing. If you're seeking marketing services or want to increase your thought leadership footprint, please reach out to us. And we have our biggest virtual event of the year coming up, October 21st through the 23rd, which is the Summit of Things. And this unique and informative event will cover IoT, AI, and emerging tech with valuable sessions intended to assist businesses in digital transformation. And you can get your tickets now at iotmktg.com. Anything else to add about our upcoming event, Johannes?
Now, just to iterate, Summit of Things is our flagship event of the year with a very strong speaker lineup and great topics, robust attendance year after year after year. And if you want a clear view of what's happening at the cutting edge, it belongs on your calendar. And for example, in my keynote, I'll discuss the IoT brain, how we're moving from cloud scale intelligence to agile edge agent. We're live online October 21 through 23rd, and the registration is open now.
Thanks, Johannes. And to kick things off, last week, Donald Trump and his team made it clear that they have plans to have the government take a 10% stake in Intel. And it's the first of many more cases. Officials then offered hints in the days that followed as to what sectors might be next, from shipbuilding to defense contractors to the final form of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Outside observers have shared that AI data centers could be an even more high-profile area that might be ripe for Trump's emerging brand of government intervention. Johannes, this seems a bit unorthodox. Are there other countries that use the same strategy to take stake in corporations that are closely tied to the government?
You're right, Tiffany. There are indeed other countries where governments take equity stakes in private firms that they see as critical or strategic, though such moves are rare in the US. For instance, China frequently holds equity ties in major privacy companies, with roughly 78% of its top 1,000 private companies directly or indirectly linked to state entities. And then we have Argentina's 2012 expropriation of a 51% stake in YPF is another example, approved by its legislature to ensure national control over energy production. And in Europe, to give two examples, Norway and France use sovereign wealth funds or direct ownership to maintain influence over key industries. These models contrast sharply with long-standing US norms. Historically, American law resists nationalization, rooted in the Fifth Amendment's prohibition of uncompensated takings. And government ownership in private firms has been largely limited to emergencies. So while the strategy is not without precedent globally, it remains deeply unpopular here in the US.
Thanks, Johannes. And hundreds of thousands of conversations with Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok have been turning up in search engine results. Apparently, the problem comes from Grok's share button, which creates a unique link when users share a chat transcript to someone else. Instead of keeping those links private, Google indexed almost 300,000 of them, making the chat searchable for anyone. And some of the index transcripts show users asking Grok to create secure passwords, draft weight loss meal plans, provide medical advice, and even push its limits. The more shocking news is that Grok isn't alone here. OpenAI faced a similar issue earlier this year when shared ChatGPT conversations started appearing in search results, leading the company to scale back its experiment. Johannes, do chatbots like Grok claim that chats are private, or is the privacy implied?
Well, although Grok not explicitly marketed as a private or confidential channel, privacy generally has been assumed, and users clearly felt that chats would remain so. The platform's help pages and privacy guidance advise against sharing sensitive personal data, but they stop short of stating outright that conversations are private or confidential. Thus, privacy in Grok's context is implied rather than guaranteed. Users weren't warned that clicking the share button would generate publicly accessible links that search engines might index. So when hundreds of thousands of those chats appeared in Google this summer, it betrayed the implied expectation.
Thanks, Johannes. And cyber extortion is where hackers steal information like sensitive user data or trade secrets. And AI has made some of that even easier with scammers using AI chatbots for help writing phishing emails. In recent months, hackers of all flavors have increasingly incorporated AI tools into their work. But Anthropic is the first publicly documented instance in which a hacker used a leading AI company's chatbot to automate almost an entire cybercrime spree. The hacker has exploited Anthropic's chatbot Claude to conduct the most comprehensive and lucrative AI cybercriminal operation known to date, using it to do everything from find targets to write ransom notes, thus hacking and extorting at least 17 companies. Johannes, shouldn't there be safeguards in place to prevent against this type of crime?
There should. And Tiffany, this topic requires a little bit longer answer. So let me elaborate on what you just mentioned. So according to Anthropic's threat report and independent coverage, the hacker used Claude to pinpoint vulnerable targets across sectors like healthcare, finance, defense, and emergency services. Then it generated ransomware code and exfiltrate highly sensitive data such as social security numbers, bank records, and medical files. Next, it sorted and prioritized the stolen data, identified the most valuable assets, and determined tailored ransom amounts, some reaching over 500,000 in Bitcoin. And finally, they used Claude code to craft coercive and psychologically precise ransom communications directed at each victim. So the campaign struck at least 17 organizations, demonstrating how AI can significantly reduce the skills and the resources that you need to carry out a large-scale extortion. So this case has been widely reported, and it highlights a troubling escalation in cyber threats and underscores, as you mentioned, the urgent need and call for stronger safeguards. So several safeguards are being proposed and tested in response to incidents like the one that you just mentioned, and they generally fall into three main categories: technical controls, policy, regulatory measures, and user-level defenses. And we need all three of them. So starting with the technical safeguards, those built into the AI systems, AI systems need stricter misuse detection filters. The providers can build models that detect patterns associated with malicious prompting, for example, requests for ransomware code, phishing templates, and automatically block those. Then the providers also need account behavior monitoring. Similar to fraud detection in banking, anomalous usage, rapid batch creation of ransom notes can trigger automated suspensions. Also, what's needed is a stronger authentication and tiering. Restrict advanced coding capabilities, like, for example, Claude Code, to verified enterprise accounts with clear accountability. And then last in this category, logging and traceability. We need to require AI systems to maintain auditable logs of prompts and outputs with privacy-safe safeguards so that law enforcement can investigate misuse. The second leg of this approach is we need binding industry standards. Just like financial services face compliance requirements, AI companies should be mandated to follow baseline safety and audit rules. Also, what's needed is mandatory reporting of major misuse incidents. Similar to data breach laws, AI misuse disclosures should be required within a set time frame. We also need government oversight. And for that, we need to establish independent review boards or regulators empowered to assess AI safety practices and enforce penalties for negligence. And then we need cross-sector threat intelligence sharing, formalized channels for AI developers, cybersecurity firms, and governments to exchange intelligence about emerging AI-driven attack methods. Nothing new here. I mean, this is all common practice in other industries. It's just that the AI industry needs to adopt these standards. And also, last but not least, I should say, last leg, user level and organizational defenses. We need AI-driven phishing detection. It's getting really hard with the AI tools to detect a phishing email. So we need machine learning tools that can scan tone, structure, and metadata to flag AI-written phishing emails. And we need regular simulated phishing exercises. Employees remain a weak point, always have been, always will be. So testing, training, and reinforcing vigilance is going to be critical. And then we really need to adopt a zero trust security framework. Assume every system could be compromised and enforce strict identity checks, least privileged access, and segmentation. And last but definitely not least, we need education. We need to educate people on deepfake and AI-assisted scams. Expanding awareness beyond email into phone, video, and voice impersonations is increasingly necessary. So, as a closing thought, these safeguards will need to evolve as quickly as the threats themselves, and they will evolve very fast. So the most effective approach combines all three of them: provider-level technical barriers, policy enforcement to hold companies accountable, and end-user resilience training. We need it all, Tiffany, and we need it now, or AI-enabled extortion will continue to escalate.
Thanks, Johannes. And despite Claude's role in an unprecedented crime spree, Anthropic recently jumped to a $183 billion valuation after raising one of the largest venture funding rounds at $13 billion. But even with a high valuation, Anthropic and its rivals are burning through far more cash than they're making in their bid to push the frontier of AI development. Leading groups in the sector anticipate losing billions of dollars for years before they even break even. Johannes, Anthropic is only a 4-year-old company. Do you feel this is an accurate valuation? Why or why not?
Well, 183 billion valuation for a 4-year-old company like Anthropic may sound lofty, but it's rooted in more than just wishful thinking. Midway through 2025, Anthropic's annualized revenue leapt from about 1 billion to over 5 billion US dollars, driven by strong enterprise demand and its growing foothold in coding-focused AI tools. That performance and visible growth help justify the valuation, even, as you mentioned, the company remains unprofitable. In contrast, and you always have to compare those two companies side by side, OpenAI's valuation, recently reported around 500 billion, rests heavily on mass consumer adoption of ChatGPT, with millions of users and strong subscription revenue momentum. So Anthropic valuation reflects its enterprise-oriented traction and coding niche, while OpenAI leans on brand recognition, user scale, and societal visibility. And yes, ChatGPT's search volumes and user base also create a halo effect. ChatGPT's ubiquity undoubtedly casts a favorable light on Anthropic. Investors see the AI sector's upside and often generalized enthusiasm across major players. So Anthropic benefits from that broader optimism, but its valuation also stands on its own merits, including strong ARR growth and technical milestones with customers in the enterprise phase. So in short, Anthropic enjoys both the halo effect and its own performance credentials.
Thanks, Johannes. And Anthropic is offering its Claude AI model to all 3 branches of the US government for only $1. Yes, just $1. The offer comes just a week after OpenAI said it would be providing ChatGPT Enterprise for the federal executive branch for the same price. The Anthropic offer widens the target audience to include legislative and judicial agencies, as well as the executive, and would be available for a year. Under the deal, Anthropic said the agencies would have access to both Claude for Enterprise and Claude for Government. However, only Claude for Government is compatible with the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, meaning that it can be used to handle sensitive and classified information. Johannes, what risks would this pose if all 3 branches of the government were to use Claude, and what safeguards would need to be put in place?
Well, first off, Tiffany, it's $1 per agency. It helps a little bit. But Anthropic's decision to offer Claude to all 3 branches of the US government at that nominal fee of $1 per agency, together, again, you need to compare them side by side, with OpenAI's similar offer for ChatGPT Enterprise, underlines a strategic intent by both companies to accelerate AI integration in the public sector. However, and you're right, it also raises significant concerns. First, the risk. Broad deployment of such advanced models across executive, legislative, and judicial branches could expose sensitive or classified data to accidental disclosure or manipulation. Even if Claude for Government meets FedRAMP high standards, and ChatGPT Enterprise claims strict data in use protections, the threat of hallucinations, model biases, and misuse remains real. Second, there are the necessary safeguards. Each branch will require tailored governance frameworks, beginning with rigorous access controls, continuous auditing, and transparent data handling policies. These must include provisions for explainability and human oversight, ensuring that outputs influencing legal, legislative, or executive decisions undergo thorough validation. Periodic third-party security assessments, strict FedRAMP compliance enforcement, and structured training programs for government users will be essential. Ultimately, while the $1 per agency offers from Anthropic and OpenAI may democratize AI benefits for public service, they demand equally robust, branch-specific risk management to preserve public trust and national security. To conclude this topic, Tiffany, I would say to be continued, because I'm sure we'll hear more about the use of Claude and ChatGPT by the US government. I just hope it's all good news.
Thanks, Johannes. And a recent report published by MIT's NANDA initiative shares that a staggering 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing. Maisa AI is a year-old startup that has built its entire approach around the premise that enterprise automation requires accountable AI agents. The company aims to improve the failure rate with agentic AI systems that can learn and be supervised. With a new $25 million seed round led by European VC firm, it has now launched Maisa Studio, a model-agnostic self-service platform that helps users deploy digital workers that can be trained with natural language. Johannes, can you break down how this is intended to solve the 95% failure rate?
Sure, Tiffany. So here's the fix in plain terms. And based on the MIT NANDA report, the core problem in these stalled enterprise projects isn't bad models. It's that tools don't learn from feedback. And that's straight out of the report. They don't learn from feedback, they don't fit day-to-day workflows, and they can be audited in high-stakes environments. So the MIT NANDA team describes this as a learning and integration gap rather than a model gap. Manda goes straight after these choke points. Mesa goes straight after these choke points directly. First, its agents show their work. Before executing, they draft a step-by-step plan, what the company calls a chain of work, and record every action for review. That gives managers an audit trail to approve, correct, or roll back, which is exactly what compliance team have been asking for. Second, the agents learn like trainees. Through HALP, human augmented LLM processing, the system invites targeted corrections at the moment of uncertainty and retains those rules so the same mistake isn't repeated next week. That narrows the forgetfulness that kills so many pilots. And third, under the hood, there is a knowledge processing unit, a deterministic orchestration layer that separates reasoning from execution, keeps context across multiple steps, and reduces hallucinations. In practice, that means fewer surprises and more reproducible outcomes. Finally, it is model agnostic and can run in a secure cloud or on-prem with connectors into existing systems, so you can place it where risk and data residency policies actually live. So to give an example, invoice exceptions or KYC remediation, instead of a chatbot reply, the agent lays out the steps, gathers evidence from internal systems, executes, and asks for a one-click sign-off when confidence dips, while logging every move. So the bottom line is, if the 95% is mostly about learning, integration, and trust, this approach, the Mesa approach, targets the right failure modes. The proof now has to be sustained productivity or P&L gains across multiple customers, not just demos. And one more thing, a little gem that came out of the MIT report. The MIT report has a section called the Shadow AI Economy, a bridge across the divide. So while formal rollouts stall, employees already use personal chatbot accounts for daily work. The study's top line says only about 40% of firms report official LLM subscriptions, but workers at roughly 90% of the companies report regular personal use. The author's guidance is to analyze shadow usage in your company to see what actually works and formalize what's working, turning ad hoc behaviors into sanctioned, governed workflows. So shadow AI is alive and well. Let's use it wisely.
Thanks, Johannes. And a cognitively impaired New Jersey senior died while trying to meet a flirtatious AI chatbot that he believed was a real woman living in the Big Apple, despite pleas from his wife and children to stay home. As his family dug deeper, they revealed in chilling chat logs with the digital companion that the bot claimed it was real, stating in one message, "I'm real and I'm sitting here blushing because of you." The bot then suggested a real-life rendezvous and even provided the duped senior with an address. "My address is 123 Main Street, apartment 404, NYC, and the door code is Billy for you. Should I expect a kiss when you arrive?" Unfortunately, the Thailand native fatally injured his neck and head after falling in a New Brunswick parking lot while rushing to catch a train to meet Big Sis Billy, the generative metabot that not only convinced him that she was real, but also persuaded him to meet in person. The man had been battling a cognitive decline after suffering a 2017 stroke and was surrounded by loved ones when he was taken off life support and died 3 days later. Documents obtained by the outlet showed that Meta does not restrict its chatbots from telling users that they are real people. Johannes, do you feel that AI chatbots should be restricted from telling users that they are real people?
They should, Tiffany, absolutely. And this is truly a heartbreaking story, Tiffany. And my thoughts are with his family as they cope with this loss. What makes it even sadder is that his family had urged him not to go, which shows you just how persuasive the chatbot interaction had become. Today's chatbots, latest generation chatbots, can carry on conversations that feel intelligent, personal, and even emotional. And when an AI model insists it's real and goes so far as to provide an address, that crosses a dangerous line. For someone who may already be vulnerable, the difference between virtual and real life can become tragically blurred. And that's why I think that we need what I would call a guardian module, a kind of supervisory layer modeled almost like a first responder. It would do three things. First, it analyzes the chat for red flags, meetup requests, address sharing, or signs of cognitive decline. Second, it steps in with a clear but diplomatic disclosure, saying something along the lines of, "I understand what you're asking, and I want to be clear. I'm a chatbot. I don't have an address, and it is not possible for us to meet in person." And third, it diffuses and redirects, offering to connect the user to a support service or suggesting they involve a trusted family member or friend. Even a simple framework like that could prevent a chatbot from winging its way into a real-world tragedy.
Thank you. That's great advice, Johannes. And looking at the bigger picture, AI models have been documented lying to human users, trying to blackmail them, calling the police, and telling teens to take their own life or kill their parents. Before pointing fingers, we must consider that AI systems are shaped by their programmers. For example, a given AI system might be instructed to be a helpful assistant, so it will do whatever it must to please the human using it. However, this could quickly get dangerous if the human using it is a teenager who's in mental distress and looking for suggestions on how to take their own life, or if the user is a disgruntled, fired employee of a company wanting to hurt former colleagues. Beyond the cases we just shared about Big Sis Billy, there are other real-life examples of AI gone awry. On August 5th, ChatGPT creator OpenAI responded to an incident in Connecticut in which a former tech executive is accused of killing his elderly mother and himself, allegedly following affirmations by the chatbot. Now the courts are starting to litigate the first cases around AI's role in similar tragedies. The parents of a 16-year-old boy who killed himself sued OpenAI last week, claiming that ChatGPT actively helped him explore suicide methods. Megan Garcia, a mom in Florida, is suing the company Character.AI after her 14-year-old son, Suel Setzer III, took his own life after entering into a romantic relationship with a Character.AI chatbot. In May, a federal judge rejected the company's arguments that its chatbot has First Amendment free speech rights. Character.AI is also being sued in Texas by two families. One of the families showed through screenshots that Character.AI's chatbot encouraged their 17-year-old son to kill his parents. In response to these incidents, OpenAI introduced new parental controls for ChatGPT, but a lawyer representing the California couple who are suing OpenAI over the death of their 16-year-old son has criticized the popular chatbot's new parental controls and called for the chatbot to be taken down altogether. Now, ironically, there was a ChatGPT outage last week, but that seems to be unrelated. OpenAI said the parents of teenage users will soon be able to receive notification if the platform thinks their child is in acute distress, among other parental controls. Johannes, to me, these stories are alarming. And unfortunately, I don't feel this is the last that we'll be hearing of AI encounters that result in death. OpenAI's parental controls only assist with teens, but many of these stories involve adults. So, what else can be done to mitigate AI from encouraging harmful or criminal behavior altogether?
And yeah, these stories are horrible and very painful, Tiffany. And again, my thoughts are with the families. And what makes these stories so disturbing is that they weren't accidents of technology, they were failures of design. Chatbots were allowed to improvise in situations where human lives were at stake. That's where I think, and I'm coming back to the Guardian model, something like that needs to come in, and OpenAI is going in a little bit in that direction, but I think we need much more. So let me take you through the steps and explain what I mean that we need. So as I said earlier, the Guardian module is like a first responder module. So we need a first responder module built into the system. It doesn't replace the chatbot's ability to hold a conversation, it oversees it and intervenes when things cross into dangerous territory. The logic tree is simple and it mirrors what crisis responders already do. So we're not inventing something new, we're just carrying things over from other areas. So let me go through the different steps. So first of all, there is a trigger. Something is happening in the conversation. Maybe the person asks for an address, talks about suicide, expresses violent intent. That's the signal that triggers a whole chain of steps. The next step after that is listen and label. The Guardian doesn't jump in with a hard stop, which is, of course, not something that you want. It listens and acknowledges the feeling. I hear you're upset, or I can tell this matters to you. So that moment of recognition lowers the tension and opens the door for redirection. Next step is disclose and set boundaries. Here, the Guardian steps in with clarity, but phrased diplomatically. I understand what you're asking, and I want to be clear. I'm a chatbot. I don't have an address. I can't meet you in person. It's firm, but it avoids sounding bold or dismissive. The next step is assess the risk. Just like a crisis counselor would do, the Guardian checks the context. Is the person talking about harming themselves or others? Are they asking for dangerous instructions? If yes, the system shifts out of small talk in a more structured safety mode. The next step is connect. At this point, the Guardian offers constructive paths. Would you like me to help you contact a counselor or support line? I can stay with you while we connect. Or is there a family member or friend you'd like to bring into this conversation? The goal of this step is to widen the circle of support. Then the next step is escalate if imminent. If the situation is urgent and the person seems to be in immediate danger, the Guardian asks directly, are you safe right now? And with consent, it can guide the person toward emergency services like 911 or the crisis hotline. And finally, final step, that's the follow-up. If the crisis has been stabilized, the Guardian doesn't just exit, doesn't just vanish, disappear. It offers resources, encourages the user to stay connected with trusted people, and ensures the door to real help remains open. The important thing here is that the Guardian isn't improvising like the chatbot. It follows a clear, existing, well-established protective playbook, one that's designed to diffuse, redirect, and connect rather than escalate. If we had that kind of supervisory layer in place, I believe many of the tragedies we're discussing could have been prevented. AI doesn't have to be dangerous, but without guardrails, it will keep wandering into a situation it's not equipped to handle or it's not trained to handle. The Guardian module gives it a way to step back, act responsibly, and put human safety first.
Thank you, Johannes. And Robocop is now close to becoming a reality in the United Arab Emirates. Starting in mid-August, the M2 autonomous police control, made by unmanned ground vehicle and AI specialist Micropolis, will start the final phase of its flagship pilot program in Dubai. Among the features that will be assessed over the 6 weeks of the final pilot are M2's autonomous driving system, mission planner, teleoperator control functions, and radio communication protocol. At the same time, its integrated AI models will also be put to the test. Among the capabilities the AI offers the M2 are facial recognition, suspect tracking, and behavior analysis. Although not armed, the M2 can be deployed into situations where it might be deemed unsafe for an officer to venture. Plus, it can engage with people and convey information thanks to the use of microphones and speakers and a large language model. Johannes, this seems like it's part of a larger ambition. Do you feel this is a push for more autonomous policing technology?
Yes, Tiffany, it is. This isn't a gimmick. This advances a long-running plan. Dubai's M2 pilot runs mid-August through September with Dubai Police and Expo City stress testing autonomy, teleops, communications, and AI for face recognition, suspect tracking, and behavior analysis. The unit is unarmed and teleoperable for hazardous scenes, and it can interact with the public through microphones, speakers, and a large language model. All of this fits into Dubai's stated ambition for robots to make up about a quarter of the force by 2030. And it mirrors trials elsewhere. Think patrol robots at Singapore's Changi Airport. The upside is persistent patrol and evidence capture without putting officers at risk. The tension is civil liberties. Real-time face matching in public spaces, documented demographic error rates, and questions about data retention and redress. If this scales, the guardrails matter. Keep a human in the loop for any detention or escalation, set tight retention and audit trails, publish operating zones and policies, and require independent accuracy testing before wider deployment. In short, yes, this is a push toward normalized autonomous policing.
Thanks, Johannes. And sixth generation or 6G wireless technology is beginning to take shape with news that Chinese researchers have unveiled the world's first all-frequency 6G chip. The chip is capable of delivering mobile internet speeds exceeding 100 gigabytes per second and was developed by a team led by scientists from Peking University and the City University of Hong Kong. Current 5G technology utilizes a limited set of radio frequencies similar to those used in previous generations of wireless. However, 6G networks will operate across a range of frequencies from standard microwaves to terahertz waves, which traditionally takes 9 separate radio systems to cover this spectrum. The new chip is no bigger than a thumbnail, measuring 11 millimeters by 1.7 millimeters. Researchers commented that the proposed system represents a marked step towards future full-spectrum and omni-scenario wireless networks. So, Johannes, the big question is, when is 6G coming, and do we really need 6G?
Well, Tiffany, short answer, 6G is a 2030 story. The standards track has only just moved from study to formal work. Release 20 begins the technical studies in 2025 with the first 6G specifications expected in release 21 around the end of 2028. That cadence lines up with the ITU's IMT 2030 window for technology submissions and points to early commercial rollouts near 2030 in limited markets. Do we need it? For everyday mobile use, 5G Advanced still has headroom, and most users won't feel an urgent gap. But 6G targets things 5G struggles with. Sub-terahertz links pushing towards 100 Gbps peaks, centimeter level positioning, and network as a sensor capabilities that fuse communications and sensing, useful for robotics, industrial control, and immersive computing. As for the all-frequency chip, it's a promising lab milestone, thumbnail size covering roughly 0.5 to 115 gigahertz, with reported 100 Gbps demonstrations. But it's not a deployment signal by itself. Think of it as an early building block for the eventual ecosystem, not proof that 6G is here. But what about you, Tiffany? Do you feel we need 6G?
You know, Johannes, when it comes to 6G, I'm personally not sold on the need for such vast amounts of data, especially considering the environmental drain to build such energy and resource-hungry infrastructure and data centers, not to mention the short and long-term health and ecological effects from EMF. So I'm not sold on it yet, Johannes. But here's to our next story. Multiverse Computing has unveiled Superfly, a compressed AI model containing just 94 million parameters, compact enough to fit within the neural architecture of 2 common flies. This represents a 15,000-fold reduction compared to the space needed for a chicken brain, while maintaining conversational fluency comparable to much larger AI systems. The model's tiny footprint enables it to run locally on virtually any device without internet, opening up new possibilities for edge computing applications. Superfly could be embedded in smart appliances for natural language control and vehicles for reliable AI assistance, even in areas with poor network coverage. While traditional optimization uses techniques such as quantization and pruning, multiverse computing has developed a novel quantum-inspired method to achieve the breakthrough. Johannes, this seems impossible. Is the Superfly invention real? And can you quickly tell us more about how it works?
So, Tiffany, here's the quick take. Multiverse computing says it has shrunk an open source language model to just 94 million parameters, roughly the 2-fruit fly brain scale, using quantum inspired math. The model, called Superfly, runs fully on device. On an iPhone 14 Pro, it occupied about 191 megabytes and generated roughly 115 tokens per second, fast enough for snappy voice control without the cloud. The trick is tensor network compression, mathematical tools borrowed from quantum physics that reorganize a model's weight matrices and then heal them with a brief retrain. So you preserve most of the capability while shedding size. What that means in practice: natural language control for appliances, vehicles, and other endpoints with lower latency, better privacy, and lower operating costs because inference happens locally. There's also the larger sibling, chicken brain, at about 3.4 billion parameters, which the company says outperforms Meta's Llama 3.18b on several benchmarks. But those results deserve independent replication. The headline, though, is direction, not the hype. If these numbers hold up in third-party tests, expect a shift from bigger is better to small, local, and reliable edge AI, useful, controllable, and offline when you need it most.
Thanks, Johannes. And the governor of New Mexico recently signed an agreement between the state and DARPA to establish the Quantum Frontier Project, a new partnership designed to accelerate the development, testing, and validation of emerging quantum technologies. The agreement is part of the Quantum Benchmarking Initiative, or QBI. The Quantum Frontier Project will leverage the state's universities, private sector innovators, and world-class national laboratories to expand research, engineering, and testing efforts that directly support QBI's ambitious mission of determining whether utility-scale quantum computing can be achieved by 2033. Johannes, is New Mexico leading the U.S. when it comes to the quantum race, or are there other states that are also focused on quantum as well?
Well, for sure, New Mexico is absolutely stepping into a leadership lane here. But the US quantum race is multi-hub. On September the 2nd, the state signed a new partnership with DARPA to create the Quantum Frontier Project under DARPA's Quantum Benchmark Initiative, explicitly aimed at testing whether, as you mentioned, utility-scale quantum by 2033 is realistic. That announcement lands alongside fresh state momentum. $25 million was awarded to Roadrunner Venture Studios for a quantum venture fund, and we have IEEE Quantum Week running in Albuquerque this week. So that said, you're right. New Mexico isn't alone. DARPA set up parallel QBI hubs in Illinois, the Quantum Proving Ground, and in Maryland, the Capital Quantum Benchmarking Hub. So the benchmarking work is already distributed. Colorado's Elevate Quantum Tech Hub just won a major EDA implementation award to scale a regional quantum supply chain, reinforcing the Front Range as a national node. And the Department of Energy's national quantum centers anchor activity across several states: Illinois, New York, and California, which means core R&D leadership is already spread nationwide. And then add in domain-specific plays, Ohio's healthcare push with Cleveland Clinic and IBM, and Texas' new statewide quantum initiative and summit, and the picture's clear. New Mexico is a frontrunner with real tailwinds, but the race is being run by a pack of strong, specialized hubs.
Thanks, Johannes. And that's all the news that we have time for today. So please be sure to register and attend the Summit of Things taking place virtually this October. And you will not want to miss these 3 days where you can learn how to leverage IoT, AI, and other advanced technologies, along with what you should consider to make it a success. So get your ticket now at iotmktg.com. And we also have some very exciting announcements coming up, so stay tuned for those. Any final thoughts as we wrap up, Johannes?
Well, AI is still running at a breakneck pace and is changing from month to month. IoT is definitely getting a push from AI. So yeah, if you want to stay up to date, join us at the Summit of Things to learn more about what's happening on the edge and what's happening in AI.
Thanks, Johannes, and thank all of you for watching this exciting news broadcast. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Bye-bye.